All right, let's get right into it. When you think about a political canvasser, you probably picture someone with a clipboard just knocking on a door, right? But what's the real difference between someone just doing a temporary gig and a person who treats it as a genuine craft? Today, we're going to break down the anatomy of a professional canvasser. And trust me, it's a role that demands some serious discipline, a ton of strategy, and a very specific mindset. So let's start with the big question. What does a canvasser actually do? It seems so simple on the surface, doesn't it? You knock on doors, you talk to people, you move on. But that idea, it barely even scratches the surface. The reality is so much more complex and honestly, a lot more demanding than most people ever realize.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. Just look at the contrast on this slide. On one side, you have the layman's version. Knock on doors, have some chats, tap some info into an app. Simple enough. But then look at the professional description. We're talking about structured, targeted conversations, strict message discipline, real-time accurate data logging, and even high-level safety awareness. The difference isn't just in a few words. It's a completely different approach to the job. It's night and day.
And that brings us to our first major point. The modern professional canvasser isn't just one thing. They're a specialist who has to wear a whole bunch of different hats. It is not a one-size-fits-all job at all. The role can shift dramatically, sometimes day by day, based on what a campaign really needs to win.
I mean, just look at the variety of work here. One week, a canvasser might be gathering signatures for a petition where every single detail has to be legally perfect. The next, they could be managing crowds at a super high-energy rally or running a high-pressure get-out-the-vote operation. They might even be doing what's called lit drops. That's campaign speak for literature drops, which takes some serious logistical skill to pull off right. Or they could be back at the office providing critical administrative support, making sure all that data is clean and usable. It's a whole suite of very distinct skills.
So what's the DNA of a top-tier canvasser? What really makes them tick? Well, it pretty much boils down to three core identities that separate the amateur from the pro. They are a producer, a professional, and a teammate. Let's break down what each of those actually means in practice.
First up, the producer. This is all about results. It's that simple. A real pro doesn't just say, "Oh, I worked really hard today." No way. They say something like, "I knocked 90 doors per shift, I had a 25% contact rate, and that helped us hit our voter ID goal for the week." See the difference? They speak in numbers, they track their own growth, and they can tell you exactly how their individual effort helped move the entire campaign forward. It's all about measurable impact.
Next, we have the professional. This is all about reliability and mindset. It means showing up on time with your phone charged, ready to hit the ground running. It's about having the mental toughness to deliver the same performance on a cold, rainy day when no one's answering the door as you do on a perfect sunny one. And this is crucial. When something goes wrong, they take ownership. They don't blame the list or the weather or the app. They focus on finding solutions, no excuses.
And finally, the teammate. A true pro has a low ego. They're not just open to feedback, they actively seek it out because they're always looking to get better. They don't just hoard their secrets to success, they actively help the newer canvassers, share tips, and try to lift up the entire team's performance. They get that a campaign is won or lost as a team.
Okay, so now that we know who these professionals are, let's dig into what they do. Because the actual craft of canvassing, well, it's a delicate art. It's all about turning a simple conversation on a doorstep into a meaningful political conversion.
And this slide illustrates it perfectly. A professional conversation is not some random chat. It is highly structured. It kicks off with a strong, confident opening. Then it moves to asking really smart, strategic questions. And most importantly, it involves active listening. You have to hear what the voter is actually saying. Only then can you tailor the message to what that person cares about before you close with a clear, direct ask, like pledging to vote. It's a process.
And that brings us to maybe the most crucial skill of all, something called message discipline. This is the whole ballgame. Look, anybody can read a script, but a professional, they internalize the campaign's talking points so deeply that they can deliver them in a way that feels totally authentic and persuasive. It's that perfect balance between campaign's consistency and a real, genuine human connection.
So how do you actually spot one of these pros out in the wild? Well, you can tell a whole lot just by the way they talk about their work. So let's run through a couple of classic interview questions that will reveal everything you need to know.
Okay, imagine you're in an interview and they hit you with this one. A campaign manager needs to know if you can handle the pressure, a voter is yelling at you, maybe they're about to slam the door in your face. What do you do? The story you tell is actually less important than how you tell it.
And here's the secret. Here's what they are really listening for. They do not want to hear drama. They want to hear about emotional control. They want to hear about a calm, de-escalating response. Did you protect the campaign's reputation? Did you keep yourself safe? A pro talks about solutions, not about how they were a victim of some rude voter.
All right, here's another critical question, and this one is all about performance. It's a direct test of that producer pillar we talked about earlier. There is absolutely no room for vague answers here. It demands specifics.
And once again, here's what a hiring manager is hunting for in the answer. They need to hear concrete numbers, specific metrics, and a crystal clear understanding of how that canvasser's daily work connected to the campaign's big picture goals. An amateur talks about effort. A professional talks about outcomes.
So let's try and distill all of this down into something super practical. When you're trying to identify a professional canvasser, it really just comes down to spotting a clear set of green flags and knowing how to avoid the red ones.
This slide lays it all out, clear as day. The red flags? Things like vague experience, blaming everyone else for their problems, or disrespecting voters. The green flags? They own their numbers, they respect the rules of the craft, and they handle conflict like an adult. A real pro doesn't look for shortcuts. They actually care about doing the job the right way.
So ultimately, it really just comes down to this. A professional canvasser is a disciplined operator. They aren't just out there passing out flyers, they are executing a strategic field plan, door by door. They treat their work as a true craft, and they measure their success by their actual impact, not just by how much effort they put in.
And that leaves us with one final powerful question. It's one that every true professional should be able to answer without hesitation. It's not just about what you've done in the past, but about what you're going to do next. What will your work ethic, your professionalism, and your impact prove about you in those first 30 days? That's the real measure of a pro.